All right, on this episode of JMABs Juicy Journey, episode 6, Walk and Chew Bubblegum. So today we're going to go over some articles. We're going to be looking at COVID data, hospitalizations, death rates, and then we're going to jump into some articles around mental health, virtual, educational testing results from virtual education versus in student or in class student learning, and the significant failure virtual schooling has shown or provided for children, and the test results that demonstrate it. And then we're also going to be looking at young women who are married off in third world countries. Has there been significant, by millions and millions and millions of girls being married off now as young as 8 years old because their families can't feed them, and suitors are promising to feed their daughters to marry them off, and the families can't feed them anyway, so they're really stuck. And these are real impacts that America, if it made better decisions in terms of how it handled this COVID crisis, could help remedy. And we'll also look at starvation across the world and how, because America has decided to cap its economy in terms of not letting people work, it is having a direct impact on people's deaths around the world. So a little heavy, but we're going to go through factual information because I think it's important that people make a comparison between what their government is telling them they need to do and the mainstream media is supporting in terms of lockdowns, not allowing people to work, and curtailing your individual freedoms in the name of safety around COVID, and what the actual impacts that are happening today and will happen for decades to come because of these decisions are actually occurring in the real world. Because as an informed population, right, we should be able to make those decisions. But today we can't. We're only getting one side of the story. And to question it, you are called a killer. You killed grandma because you even questioned what we're doing here. So I hope you guys enjoy. It's going to be a good one. Like I said, it's heavy, but, it's a heavy time, end of the year. But enjoy. Have a good one. All right, guys, we're going to jump into it today. We're going to go through some statistics in terms of impacts in different areas for COVID. So I have some actual articles from reports on virtual schooling and how that's impacted specifically marginalized children, those at the poverty level, might be English as a second language, those who have hardship, and see how they've been affected from this. Also going to be looking at Americans' mental health, some statistics that have come out recently that have shown declines, and then also some world events. So there have been significant increases in young women ages 8 to 12 years old being married off in a lot of developing countries, Africa, Asia, and South Africa, and specifically because of COVID and the inability of families to be able to keep families together. So they're essentially having to marry off young women, or their young daughters, I should say, so that they can keep eating, essentially. And then we're going to look at the impact on world food. There are reports that over 100 million people are now, an additional 100 million people are now on a daily basis, essentially starving because of impacts to food prices, supply chains, and their inability to farm, or for rich nations, America, Western nations, China, these countries that typically are giving are not able to as much, and we're seeing significant increases. So before we jump into that, again, I wanted to point out, I'm looking at an article here, which I always do, COVID Act Now, which is the website, covidactnow.org. So looking at Washington State statistics. So this is fresh as of today, the 14th. I'm sorry, the 13th. Today is the 14th, data is from the 13th. So looking at cases, again, cases are continuing to rise. I'm going to start from 5 days ago. We had 3,000 cases a day on December 10th. And then 3,100 on the 11th, 3,300 on the 12th, and 3,400 cases of positive COVID on the 13th. Now, let's now look at deaths, because I think this is really important. What we saw in the April timeframe was kind of a high for Washington State, an average of 27 deaths a day. In the summer, we averaged, in terms of an average peak, about 17 deaths a day. Although we did have, peaks in terms of daily death counts. Remember, this is an average. So looking at daily death counts, the highest day in the summer for deaths was 42 deaths on July 24th. Okay, so let's look at the recent time period and where we're at. So 2 weeks ago, we had an average of 17 deaths a day, and we had a peak, so the highest of ever since COVID, essentially, was 67 deaths in a day. So the one thing I also want to point out is when I look at these charts, because I'm looking at daily reporting, what you'll notice is sometimes there's gap, gap, spike, gap, gap, spike. So there's a difference here in terms of reporting. I believe there's some bunching going on. So if you were to kind of normalize this and say, well, for the 2 days prior to November 30th, which was that day with 67 deaths, there was nothing reported really the 2 days prior to that. So it's probably more like 20 deaths a day, which is, in alignment with kind of where the average was at anyway. So that kind of makes sense. Where we're at now. So we'll go back the last few days. Remember, this is deaths a day. And the rolling average, 7-day rolling average, is around 24 right now. We had 44 on the 9th. And I'm going to skip a day. Looks like it skips a day, so I can't actually see it. 22 on the 11th. And then it skips again, and then 2 on the 13th, which was the last day that was reported. So you can see there's these little gaps and fluctuations. So I just want to make sure you guys keep this data in mind, because we're going to go through some content today that I think is going to demonstrate what we're willing to do in terms of impacting individuals' lives for these deaths that we're seeing. So failing grades. So failure in math and English jumped 6-fold for the most vulnerable students in Maryland's largest school system. This is from the Washington Post, dated December 3rd. So Washington Post. It's via MSNBC, or via MSN. What they did was they essentially have these children to undergo math, English type tests, and they do this every period, right? So in one but stark example, more than 36% of ninth graders from low-income families failed the first marking period in English. That compares with fewer than 6% last year, when the same students took the test in 8th grade. So 1 year later, went from 6% to 36% failure rate. And, it unfortunately gets worse from there. So nearly 45% of those with limited English proficiency failed the first marking period in 9th grade math, for instance. A stunning figure, given that only 8% of the same students failed on that test the year prior. So same group, and you see a 37% increase. Really what I wanted to do to drive home the point of these values is we are setting up our children for the future for compounding failure. If you're going to fail early, it is very difficult to get caught back up again. But that's what we're doing to these children. We're forcing them to stay at home and to work virtually. And many parents, especially if you're vulnerable, right? If you're lower income family, your parents might be working. They don't have time to help you with your homework, right? They might not even understand it themselves if maybe they don't have that acumen in terms of knowledge. And so they don't have the direct support they need to be successful anymore. And that's unfortunate. because we're setting up a future of children to fail, and to fail hard. And, that's a really difficult proposition to be in. And you would say it's worth it, right? We're saving lives by keeping these children at home. So yeah, maybe they'll fail and never go anywhere in life, but people are going to live. I just want to point out the CDC themselves have released data. And for those between the ages of 0 and 22, 24, there are about 550 COVID-related deaths over the entire United States. So everyone who's died from COVID, 550 are ages 0 to 24 years old. And I'll tell you this, that demographic, they're not adhering to social distancing guidelines for the most part. We all know youth, they're going to break the rules. They're going to go out and hang out with their friends. They're going to do what they do behind parents' back, because that's what children have always done. And so if you're going to tell me that keeping them at home to fail, because we know what happens, it's a compounding interest on failure of education. These children won't make it. They will get involved in the criminal justice system now. They will also have offspring, and the cycle perpetuates. And so you have to ask yourself, is it worth it to keep children at home knowing that the most vulnerable, those students who need the most support and attention are struggling and failing? And why? 550 across the whole United States. To me, there's a trade-off value that's not being understood very clearly. And it's going to have huge ramifications in the future. Maybe not tomorrow, but 15, 20 years from now, it's going to be significant. These children are failing, and we do not have the structure in place. And I know virtual is all being talked up right now, but it does not take the place of in-class student learning. And that's where students belong. They belong there. And it is cruel that we are forcing students to fail. It's in the numbers. It's right there. And it's a fact. So we go from that and we start looking at mental health. So the United States, they do, this is another article from Gallup. So Americans' mental health. Gallup essentially polls people on their mental health every year. They've been doing it for several decades, essentially. So highlights from the story. This came out, December 7th. And articles titled, Americans' Mental Health Ratings Sink to New Low. So 34% say their mental health is excellent, down from 43%. So what is that? An 8% drop. Overall, that is about what we're looking at right now. So 8% of essentially adults feel that their mental health has dropped from where it was in the previous year. 8% doesn't seem like a lot, but when you start then making a correlation between every drop in mental health by point and the increase in depression-related illnesses or suicide, you can actually make a correlation there. And the issue is that's not being discussed at all. So when we start talking about rises in suicide, when we start talking about individuals not taking care of their physical health, which has direct impact on your mental health, this is where it's happening. These are the battlegrounds. These are the trenches where it's occurring. And so you're locking people up and you're not letting them make decisions as adults in a free country to live their life how they choose based on the information that's available to them to make decisions. And so the ramification is we're going to have more deaths. There's no way you can deny it. There is no way you can deny that. So mental health, physical health drops in the United States. And then something I think is really important, families marrying off their daughters around the world. We all know about dowries and in impoverished nations and third world nations where it's actually part of the culture to marry off a young woman, hopefully of some age, not 8 or 12, but that's what we're seeing, unfortunately. So just to give you guys some information here. And it's pretty sad because this is all preventable. So what's going on in a lot of these countries, so like I said, Asian countries, African countries, and South American countries, the families are not able to feed their children. They just don't have the means anymore. So what's happening? They're having to marry off their youngest daughters. So essentially, they're getting some dowries of food or some sort of guarantee that their daughter will be fed if they marry them off. And we are seeing that right now. So this is an article, Families Marry Off Daughters to Ease Finances Amid COVID-19. This is from the AP, and it's from, let's see here, today, the 14th. So let's see what this paragraph says here. So many countries had made progress against such traditional and transactional marriages of girls in recent decades, but COVID-19's economic havoc has caused significant backsliding. The United Nations estimates that hardships resulting from COVID-19 will drive 13 million more girls to marry before the age of 18. And if you go through this article here, it's littered with stories of young women as young as 8 years old being either starting the process or have already been married off. Young women whose breasts have not even developed and only developed with pregnancy when they were married off for COVID reasons. So this is the real world impact of these policies for containing COVID. So we're seeing mental health drop, a generation of lost children in terms of education, and millions of young underage women being married off so that their families and they themselves can eat. Just think about that when you think about the draconian policies that are put in place to protect Americans. Because what is happening here has an impact there. And we're going to go through that right now. So why are these families struggling? So this comes from the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition, and it's from the 7th of December. COVID-19 brief, impact on food security. So what's going on right now? Well, because a lot of rich nations are not able to provide, a lot of individuals on the margins are now slipping. So the UN warns 36 countries, including Ethiopia, Nigeria, South Sudan, Syria, Venezuela, and Yemen, could experience famines in 2020, pushing an additional 100 million people to the brink of starvation. 130 million. Think about that. That is a huge driver. According to the International Food Policy Research Institute, for every 1% decline in global economic growth. So remember, this goes back to we have to stop the economy. Everyone's just going to live in their house for 6 weeks and the government's going to write checks and everything will be okay. Listen to this. For every 1% decline in global economic growth, 14 to 22 million people are forced into extreme poverty. Extreme poverty. That is sad. That is sad. You know what's sad? 300,000 people dead in America. Yeah, that is sad. But when you start looking at what the impact of America has on an outsized impact on the world, and also how policies at home are directly impacting our youth, to me, it changes the scope of the conversation. Why we should be out working. We should be out helping each other. In the United States, grocery prices in April recorded the sharpest increase in 50 years, led by rising prices for meat and eggs. U.S. meat prices could increase as much as 20% as supplies shrink by 30%. Experts project more than 50 million Americans will be food insecure, including about 17 million children, because of this. That's happening right now, every day, in this country, because people can't work. Another statistic, monthly food costs in Syria have increased by 240%, driving 1.4 million people into food insecurity. These are real things happening. And we choose to let this happen. And it's unfortunate. So another issue about children going to school virtually are food nutrition programs. So the COVID-19 pandemic is likely to exacerbate child hunger and malnutrition, as the pandemic has forced more than 1 billion children out of school, depriving their access to nutritious meals. In America, you might get a bus that comes by and drops off for your kid. When you're living in Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa, Asia, there's probably not a bus there's no bus coming by to drop off that food. It's happening in the schools, and they're not allowed to go back to the schools. 85 million children in Latin America and the Caribbean who heavily relied on school feeding programs to combat malnutrition and micronutrient deficiencies no longer have access to the social food safety net. In South Africa, school closures stopped a national feeding program that provided nutritious meals to 9 million poor children. The economic impact expected with disruptions to routine health services could result in deaths of 2.3 million children over the next year, a 45% increase in children under 5 years of age. This is in addition to the nearly 3 million children who are already dying from malnutrition annually. So we've pretty much said, hey, we're willing to take an economic hit at home. We're not going to work, and that's going to decrease our GDP, which, as the richest nation on the earth, has a outsized impact on the global GDP. And we're essentially sentencing children to death. They can't learn. They can't eat. Young girls are being married off so their families can keep eating by the promise that their suitor will feed their child. That's the position outside of the Garden Gate community of America that people are having to live with. And not only have we banished a generation of children in America to failure by forcing them to do education virtually, which the data is coming back, it's showing it's not working. And here we are. Because we're concerned of all the people who have died from COVID, over 300,000 in this state, or this country. 550 been between the ages of 0 and 24. Well, in my opinion, you take that risk, because you know what? What is the impact of these children not eating? How many of them will die? It's already said here in this article, 2.3 million children are expected to die over the next year because of food starvation, because of declines in the GDP globally. That's happening. It's happening right now every day. So when you line up these stats with the trickling of deaths from COVID, it is irresponsible to not take that into account when you're making decisions. And most of our politicians won't, because they're interested in themselves. They're interested in the soundbite of the media every day. That's really all they're interested in. That's all they want. They want to win the day. Hey, we did a lockdown. We were able to prevent some people from dying. Yeah, you didn't die, did you? Well, that was from the lockdown. If we didn't do the lockdown, you'd be done. I mean, everyone's got COVID, right? I mean, if you're not locked down, you're all going to die. No, the truth is, children are suffering around the world. We're throwing away children's future here in America, and no one gives a damn. And that's unfortunate, because all the media wants to talk about is death counts from COVID every day. COVID death count. Where's the suicide death count? Where's the death count from untreated illnesses that could have been? These are all coming. All these children who are not getting education, do you think they're just going to give up and say, oh, well, it didn't work out for me in this life. I guess I'll try better next time. Hopefully there isn't COVID. No. They're going to be outside of the system. It's going to be another generation that's going to have to be supported because of our failures right now. The decisions politicians are making today are causing these children, has a direct impact on the failure that will occur for these children. And to me, that is criminal. It is criminal to do that. But here we are. So those are the articles I was looking at today. I really am kind of livid with the whole situation. We obviously are in lockdowns here in Washington again. Jay Inslee have pushed those out into January. Why, I don't know. I'm by the reservation here in Tualatin. No issue at all. There's no issue. Restaurants are open. Everyone's fine. And, everyone's trying to make do, but there's going to be pushback. What's America look like 6 months from now, right? I mean, Bill Gates has already said he doesn't see us returning to normal until 2022. I don't think there's patience for that. I think by summer, there's going to be civil disobedience. There will be individuals standing up to this. There will be organized disobedience in terms of these policies, these draconian, tyrannical policies that are literally the definition of tyranny. No state legislature is voting to lock people down. These are mandates from governors, essentially. And we all know why they won't pass laws around masks, because it would be deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. And then they would have no power to make anyone wear a mask. So they're not willing to go that far. Where we should be as a society, we're 8-9 months into this. Everyone knows the data. We all know what's going on. You know how to social distance. You know how to wear a mask. People need to be making decisions for themselves. We know what's going on. Businesses should be open and allowed to operate. And they should be able to, including restaurants. And people want to make that risk-informed, calculated risk. They should be able to do so. And everyone always says, well, you're going to kill grandma. You're going to kill so-and-so. Well, guess what? Why is grandma out? Why are you letting grandma out? Why are you going to go visit grandma? If you go out and you're living a life where you're going to interact with other people and there's COVID going on, why would you go visit grandma? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. If I had the flu, I wouldn't go visit grandma. It's mind-boggling, these arguments that people come up with, because it doesn't even make logical sense. It's just very emotional. Here's the deal. You want to stay home, stay home. If you're concerned about your health, well, one, get in the gym. Build one, I don't know, sit-ups, crunches, something. Because most people, this is America. We all know there's an obesity epidemic in this country. That was well before COVID-19, and I'm guessing the COVID-19 add-on that most people have gotten is not helping the situation in terms of their weight. So there's things people could do. They just choose not to. They'd rather complain. They'd rather sit at home and, wait for some vaccine that is, who knows how long that'll be till they get. And now we don't even know if you can spread it or not if you get the vaccine. So now we have to wear masks and social distance and keep restaurants and other businesses closed even longer. No. It's just lunacy where we're at right now. I could totally see a situation where this goes on for a long period of time until, something big and significant occurs. Because this, like I said, this is the literal definition of tyranny. It is starting to make less and less sense as the data comes out. People know how to stay safe and take care of themselves. So I'm not sure what we're doing here anymore. It's more of just like perpetuating this power that politicians have, because they're not going to give it up. You look at, again, I've talked about this before. You look at post 9/11, what happened there? Did we have the Patriot Act and then it kind of just fizzled out over a couple of years? No, it totally led into the NSA and the CIA and FBI stealing our information and collecting it, wars around the world. And there's going to be more policy that comes out from this in that regard. There'll be less privacy. There will be less ability to make decisions for your life, how you choose to live your life, because now you have to take the interests of everyone else into heart. Well, geez, Justin, you're not being really collective in your mindset if you want to go out and go to the bar. What are you doing? You're going to kill someone. No. Reject that argument. We're going to go out. We're going to have fun. We're going to do what we do. We need to get this country open back up and do what we do best. Let's go work. Let's get the GDP up. Let's save millions of children's lives instead of sentencing them to death. Let's get our children back in school so we don't have a generation of lost children that are then going to grow up to be products of our criminal justice system and their children in turn. Let's not condemn them to that future. Let's instead open up. Let's instead be free, because that's the only way you're going to get through this. That's the only option to get through this. Sitting at home is not going to do it. It's just not. I know people want to do it, but we've tried it. We've done it. We've done it multiple times, and here we are. The results are the same. It's taking a hammer to a scalpel job. We shouldn't be doing it this way, but hell, that's where we're at right now. So beyond that, it's just COVID right now. I mean, there's nothing going on. Everyone's getting ready for Christmas. I know I am. I'll be going out. I've seen plenty of Christmas shopping going on. You know, it's interesting that everything's closed, but everyone's out at the mall. Everyone's at Best Buy. Everyone's at Walmart. No issues there, right? It's shocking to me that the hypocrisy of individuals. You know, they'll go out and spend 3 hours on Walmart and then turn around and say, how dare you want to go out and drink a beer? You're going to kill grandma. Is that what you want? You want grandma to die? Come on, people, grow up. Grow up. I mean, otherwise, what's the point of this? What is the point of any of this? If you can't make decisions for yourself as an informed adult, then what is this? You know, what is the value of a constitution and individual rights and freedom? I mean, if they have to be fought for, they have to be fought for. They were in the beginning, and it seems like every few generations you have to kind of remind individuals what we're about as Americans in terms of our values and our moral compass and our guiding light, liberty and justice. And that's where we need to be. So, you know, whatever happens with distribution of the vaccine and people taking it and you know, TBD, wait to be seen, right? They're just rolling out the shots today, kind of the first ones. So it'll be going to essential worker, you know, frontline medical staff, and then it'll be elderly and at risk, which it should be. And if it's needed, you know, I actually don't even care if I got COVID. That's the thing. I have no reason to get this vaccine. If it doesn't actually stop from the transmission of it, then I don't give a shit, because I don't even care if I get it. I'm pretty sure I've had it already. And if I got it again, whatever. And let's also point out, there's more strains coming out now. It's a new year. I've heard in the UK, they have a different strain they're fighting of COVID now. How well these vaccines protect against those, we have no clue. So like I said, politicians are going to keep moving the goalpost. It started at 15 days to bend the curve. Now we're at maybe through 2022. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's lunacy, and we can't just keep going with that. So, you know, if recalls are needed, if we need to take more formal action just in terms of civil disobedience, which is totally appropriate, you know, that's just what we need to do. It's part of life, and you go through it and you come out better on the other end. So yeah, I think that's what's going on this week. Like I said, it's COVID. I think next week I'll come back with a pretty big topic on the presidency, the transition with Biden, and, you know, pretty much Trump every, I don't know, 50 times a day tweeting that he won, which is actually really fun. I love watching it because he essentially trolls media, and then you see the corporate media lose their shit whenever he says that, like, how dare he say that? But, you know, I mean, when this whole country's going down to a shithole every day, more and more and more, might as well have laughs on the way out, right? That's how I look at it. So I'm going to keep having a good time. That's my goal. Staying busy, projects, end of the year, just getting everything sorted out so I can keep moving hard into 2021, COVID or not. Like I said, don't give a shit if I get it. It's fine. I'll be fine. Healthy guy, fit. And I do not at all think the remedy is supportive, given its impact. Really, we should be open. People should be making their own decisions. And then let's see what that looks like. And I think that's going to be reflective of where America should be. So we're not killing children across the world. So we're not losing a generation of children here. So suicides are not continuing to go up in this country, which they are dramatically. So with that, kind of a Debbie Downer this week, but I mean, it's got to be said, because no one wants to say, in corporate media, mainstream media, whatever you want to call it, they won't talk about these other side issues. All they want to do is hammer you every day with COVID. Make sure you understand that if you make a decision outside of stated policy and rules, then you are hurting people. And that's not the truth. It is not the truth at all. You can, as Jay Inslee loves to say, you can walk and chew bubblegum. You know, we're smart enough people to do that. So with that, I'm going to go walk and chew some bubblegum, because I'm heading to the Ram to watch Monday Night Football. Eat, drink, and be merry. Peace, y'all. Have a good one.